All right, we're live here for the UFC 263 recap show, joined by the hosts of the In The Clinch podcast on the Fight Game Media Network, Ryan Frederick and Paul Fontaine. Fellas, how are you doing after this really fun UFC show?
I'm good.
I'm doing good. Yeah. So,
all right, so we're gonna hit main talking points, and then I'll get. I didn't watch any of the undercard, so we'll get some of those thoughts, I'm sure, as we get through this. But I'm just gonna kind of go in the order of the main event first, and then we'll kind of go down the line because I think the three main talking points out of this show all happened on the last three fights. So, main event: Israel Adesanya retains his middleweight title against Marvin Vettori. And Ryan, what I wanted to ask you is, as I'm watching this fight, it's very clear that there's a large distance in talent between both fighters. Not saying that Vettori didn't deserve this shot, but pretty much from the first round on, I think you could tell. Okay, there's definitely a talent discrepancy between the two. While you're watching this fight, Vettori's corner is just saying jab, jab, takedown, and that's how we're going to win this fight. But I thought the entire problem with Vettori's strategy was he was so predictable. Adesanya could see everything coming, all the strikes coming. He's throwing these wide punches coming straight forward. There was no variety in his attack. Like, what did you think of the whole game plan for Vettori in this fight?
when you look at the game plan, it's almost like they had no idea how to actually beat Israel Adesanya. It was just, there was no checking of the leg kicks, which if that should be the first thing you focus on when you're fighting Israel Adesanya is checking the leg kicks. There was none of that going on. Vettori, it's almost like they wanted to follow the Jan Blachowicz blueprint of just like peppering shots and then trying to pressure against the fence with takedowns. But the thing is, Blachowicz was so massive against Adesanya, and Vettori really wasn't any all that much bigger than Adesanya, so he wasn't able to actually put the takedowns in. And then every time you saw Vettori take Adesanya down, Adesanya got right out of it or even reversed to the top. I mean, it was just it. The more the fight went on, the more is just like Vettori and his team have no idea how to beat this guy, and it was very clear that Vettori was not. I don't want to say not prepared. It's just they just had no answer to the puzzle that is Israel Adesanya.
Paul, I sort of made it sound like it's easy to beat Adesanya. It's absolutely not. 100% not. He's a puzzle. Did you think they had the right strategy for Vettori, or was this one of those fights where, unless he landed a lucky punch 10 times out of 10 times, this was kind of how it was going to end?
Well, I thought the strategy, given the way the Blachowicz fight went, made sense. And Ryan mentioned that he thought that Vettori wasn't that much bigger than Adesanya, and it's funny that he said that because I kind of thought he looked like quite a bit bigger. Now, of course, I don't know what the weights were, but I mean, saying that he was quite a bit bigger than Adesanya, he was nowhere near as big as Blachowicz.
Right.
And so that strategy wasn't going to work because Adesanya's been fighting middleweights his whole career, and he can get up from a takedown. And I'm sure he knew it was like a chess game. So he knew what Vettori was going to do, and so he prepared for what Vettori was going to do, is what I think. And so he knew if it went to the ground, all he had to do is get up. And then I tweeted too that I thought like the striking defense he made Vettori look stupid. Like, just the way he was in and out, and just, Vettori was punching air, and every time he took him down, he just got right back up like nothing. That kick against the cage to escape that one takedown was so sweet. To reverse it. He was a masterclass. And then by the end, he was just toying with him in the fifth round. And I think the crowd started to turn on the fight a little bit, but yeah. He got him back with the promo.
So I think Paul did a really good job of being a ventriloquist. Your screen froze, Paul. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it.
Yeah.
So we'll just roll with it. But so I guess the other thing I wanted to ask Ryan was as the all the shenanigans in the end, I was just kind of like, whatever. I think at least Adesanya realized that maybe the fight wasn't that fantastic after we had gotten, what we did in those two previous fights. So, we'll spice it up. I'll talk a little bit of trash, the whole thing about respect and all that. He really cut a great promo at the end to set up his next fight. What do you think about Whittaker and Adesanya?
I think Robert Whittaker is probably the only guy that realistically has a chance to beat Adesanya in the division. I don't really see anybody else who can. I don't think Darren Till can. That would be just a straight kickboxing match. But Whittaker is just, when you look at the fight when he beat Kelvin Gastelum, he was just incredible, just completely well-rounded. I think he's a better takedown artist than Marvin Vettori. And then, he mixes his strikes well. So I think, honestly, at 185, the only person who can beat Adesanya right now is maybe Robert Whittaker, and I'm actually not really convinced that Whittaker actually can beat him. So, Adesanya might be champion until he decides to not anymore. Who knows?
So, Paul, we are, what has it been? Almost 2 years since they last fought. They fought in Australia, and Adesanya won the title. Rematches, I don't know what the percentages say. I don't know what the analytics say about how often the second fight is a different outcome than the first fight. But what do you think about that matchup? Do you give Whittaker a chance after what we saw from their first fight?
I think he's got as good of a chance as anybody, like Ryan said. If he can, essentially, if he can pressure Adesanya and implement his game plan, and obviously it's going to be completely different from what Vettori did. It's going to be about volume, and it's going to be about connecting, and it's going to be about hurting him and trying to throw Adesanya off his game, and that's not easy to do. But if anybody at middleweight can do it, it's Robert Whittaker. And if Whittaker can't, then maybe there's some guy, that's not even in UFC yet that might eventually get there, but I don't think there's anybody in UFC right now that can even give Adesanya a competitive fight besides Whittaker.
So let's actually talk about the semi-main event, which was a great moment. And we'll talk about sort of what your favorite moments of the night were in a little bit. But Brandon Moreno beats Deiveson Figueiredo. This is a rematch from a fight at the end of last year, which I know everyone loved the Joanna fight. This was my favorite fight of the year. But what a great story. He's the first Mexican-born champion in the UFC. And he basically is facing a guy who looks to be about 20 pounds heavier than him as they're in the cage. He dominates really from the bell. He's quicker. Figueiredo, I know he had some weight cut issues. He did not make that excuse as to why the fight happened the way that it did. He was very, very classy on how he handled it. But I think all three of us were kind of surprised at the outcome. Not that Moreno won, because that fight last year was ended up a draw, and he was right with him everywhere. But maybe in sort of the dominant way that he finished him, he submitted him. He was, again, if you were to, I don't know if you were to count every minute of those rounds, but he won. I think every minute of those rounds. Were you guys surprised? And we'll start, Paul. Were you surprised to see him handle Figueiredo as he did?
Yeah, I kind of expected him to come out the way he did, and I just assumed that what would happen was Figueiredo would catch him at some point and then turn the tide and take over, and that just never really happened. There was the start of the second round, I think Figueiredo got, he was starting to control a little bit, but Moreno quickly turned that around, and he won both of the first two rounds pretty easily, and then in the third he finished it. But yeah, I think that if anybody thought that Moreno was going to win, it was probably going to be by finish, by decision. I don't think anybody thought Figueiredo was going to get finished, and Ryan and I both thought there was a real good chance that Figueiredo was going to get the finish. Ryan pretty much said it. I had predicted that it would go the distance at one point, and then I kind of resigned myself to the fact that Figueiredo was probably going to finish him.
So you made that prediction on In The Clinch, which you can listen to on the Fight Game Media Network Patreon. But so Ryan, I'm sure you were pretty surprised at how this happened. Do you? I don't know if you can sort of put percentages. How much of this is the best Brandon Moreno, and how much of this was a really bad Figueiredo?
I'll say that when we did our preview on our podcast Monday night, that I thought that it was 100% chance that Figueiredo was going to win this fight, but it just felt like as the week went on, especially when we got to the pre-fight, it was 100% chance that Figueiredo.
Sorry,
it just felt like as the week went on, especially when we got
somebody's running the show in the background.
Damn it, Paul! but
it just started.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but once we got to like Thursday in the pre-fight press conference, you just kind of see how both men are carrying themselves. It kind of started feeling like, you know what, Brandon Moreno might win this fight. And then once Moreno dropped Figueiredo in the first round with that jab, I was just like, Brandon Moreno is going to win this fight. I didn't think there was any doubt. I am surprised that he finished him, but yeah, Figueiredo, I mean, I don't know if it was weight issues. I mean, yeah, he made weight with seconds to go, but he's always kind of been like that. And it's never really seemed to affect his performance, but something about him seemed off. I don't know, he didn't make any excuses. He just said 4 months from now, he wants to fight again. So yeah, I don't know, but man, Brandon Moreno, he did everything you could ask for needing to win a title. Like, it was just a beautiful performance.
All right, hang with me here. I have a follow-up, which is, you guys are the insiders as far as who's next. I don't imagine they do the third fight immediately. I don't think, after this was a clear victory. There was no doubt here. But who would be next for Moreno on this list? I'm looking at the list right now of the flyweight rankings here. Who do you think that they would pair him up with next?
I think it's a name that's not on the list. Yeah, you go first, because I think it's a name that's not on your list, Garrett. But you go.
Okay.
Yeah. I do think they'll go with the third fight with Figueiredo right away, just because just now, I'm not saying that they will, but it's just kind of a gut feeling, because Figueiredo did them a favor in saving the card in December by coming back three weeks later, and I think they'll kind of keep that in the back of the mind. But I mean, the obvious next in line guy, at least of the people who were in the flyweight rankings, would be Askar Askarov, and him and Moreno fought once before, and it went to a draw, much like the first Figueiredo Moreno fight. So yeah, you got to give Moreno a chance to avenge that draw there.
All right, Paul.
So I agree with Ryan that I think that what they'll probably do is go with the rematch. But if they don't do the rematch, then I think they're going to bring I think Cody Garbrandt's going to drop down to 125 and face Moreno, because I don't know that you can headline a paper. Well, you definitely can't headline a pay-per-view with Brandon Moreno and Askar Askarov. You can definitely put it second from the top underneath a bigger title fight. But you could probably headline a pay-per-view with Moreno and Garbrandt.
Are there any guys in that division who are kind of like, they're coming, like they may not have the record yet, they may not have the name yet, but they're kind of, the who's next of that division?
What's his name? It's like Amir something. Let me pull up the rankings.
Amir Albazi?
Yeah, that's the one.
Because I mean, that's the thing with this division is, I think probably the most well-known name is Benavidez, but he's nowhere near as good as he was back in the day. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, because I think you have some momentum with Moreno, but if you don't have anyone to pair him with, I think that could hurt it a little bit. I'd love to see them follow up with this, with the story, with the moment. And we'll get to we'll get to that in a second, because I do want to talk a little bit more about that. But okay, so the third thing, and I think this is probably going to lead SportsCenter, if anything, leads SportsCenter from an MMA perspective on this night, which is, holy crap, Nate Diaz almost pulled this thing out of his ass. He was getting beat up the whole fight. He was bloody from a cut on the side of his head, a cut over his eyebrow. He really looked it looked like one of those fights where you're like, oh man, this makes me sad, because it's very clear that he is on the other end of it, and you have this young guy who just looks so much better athletically. He's quicker. He's just making. In some instances, I thought Diaz is. I think Joe Rogan and them called it gamesmanship. I was like, I don't know if it's gamesmanship. I just think he's like frustrated. But Edwards is dominating this fight, and then with like a minute left, Diaz throws this left hand. I thought Edwards was going. I think if Diaz lands one clean shot, this fight is over. But Edwards escapes. But this is kind of like the best case scenario for this kind of thing, which is Edwards now has the Nate Diaz win on his record. He's still he's won so many fights in a row, and yet Nate Diaz still comes out of this thing as the biggest star of the night. And so whatever he wants to do next, we'll see. He's got a high price tag. I know they're not paying guys a ton right now with the ESPN thing, but man, what a fight. And do you guys agree with me that, out of all the great stuff that we had, like Diaz is kind of the thing that people are going to focus on? And I'll start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, he's probably the second biggest star the company has right now. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter if Nate Diaz wins or loses. He's always going to have that fan support behind him. And if he would have not showboated after he rocked Edwards, he might have been able to finish the fight. But he just got done with his post-fight press conference. He said he suffered a cut, which is why they moved the fight off of the Houston card. He said after that he was just kind of disinterested in fighting this fight because he was prepared for May all of a sudden to have that fight pushed back a week before it was supposed to happen. It kind of just messed up his rhythm and his preparation, and and he kind of fought like somebody who was just not really, who was kind of just disinterested, just the way he was goofing around a little bit. But
didn't they say it was a back thing? Like
they claimed it was a back because I think when it comes to cuts, they don't want to let that get out.
That makes sense.
Especially when they quickly rebook fights, so that way it's not targeted.
You would think though this sport is so heavily influenced by the betting. Like for the people who bet on this fight, if they bet Nate because there were great odds on Nate, you kind of feel a little bit like, did Vegas know something that we didn't know? And that's where it kind of, the sort of like the not being honest thing kind of, I could see how it would leave a bad taste in the mouth of the bettors.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that, but I mean, just it's not going to affect losing like this isn't going to affect Nate Diaz. Like he even joked about the other day the star power. Like he said, if he wins, he's fighting for a title next. And then somebody asked him, well, what if you lose? And he goes like, I'm still fighting for a title next. He holds all the cards. Him and Conor McGregor hold all the cards when it comes to them. And Nate did say tonight that he wants to fight again in about 3 to 4 months. So I really think what happens in 4 weeks between Poirier and McGregor kind of that's kind of the direction that Nate will go. That his next fight will depend a lot on that result.
All right, Paul, what were your thoughts on Nate's Hail Mary shot there?
Well, I think I said if it had gone another 2 minutes, maybe even 1 minute, it sure looked like Nate was going to finish him. And it's just incredible. And I mean, like you said, it's the perfect scenario. And the sad thing is that Edwards will probably get a title shot off of this, and he'll probably get beat pretty badly by Usman. I think, Ryan and I will probably both agree on that. And then Diaz will do whatever Diaz does. And a year from now, Diaz is going to be a bigger star than Edwards, and Edwards is probably going to be fighting guys at the bottom of the rankings and making, a fraction of what Diaz does, but that's star power for you. I had said before the fight, I think I even said it in our little text exchange we had going on, that if Diaz wins, he gets a title shot. And if he loses, he probably gets a bigger payday against like Conor or Masvidal. And the way this fight went, now Nate's got a built-in excuse. Well, if they wouldn't have stopped the Masvidal fight, I probably would have finished him like I almost did to Edwards. So I just think he's got the world by the, whatever you want to call it, as I think John Anik said on the broadcast. And it's a good thing to be Nate these days.
Yeah, shout out to Corey who was on the text exchange.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the one that everyone talks about is, I think, and Ryan hinted toward it, which is, if McGregor loses, do they do the third Nate fight? But
I think
if
go ahead.
No, go for it.
I think that's the natural direction if that happens. So
yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But if that is not something that Conor wants, Paul mentioned a second Masvidal fight, which I think they could definitely do. But are those just about the type of fights that we're looking at? They tried to feed, they fed him someone who's kind of coming up and who needed a big win, and he got it. But it seems like for Nate, like the biggest money is in these rematches. Is there anything else that you think would be on his plate, or something that would be interesting to him to keep him coming back? Because I think that's the other thing, right? Is he makes a lot of money from these fights, and I think I was asking Paul what he thought that Nate made, because I asked Dave. I was watching with Dave Meltzer. He says he thinks at least between 2 and 3. Could even be a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, it just he doesn't have to come back and fight. Like, I'm watching this guy, take these punches and get all bloody, and I'm like, man, he's making a lot of money to do this, so he could probably take some time off if he wanted. But if he's going to come back in 3 or 4 months, like, are those the two fights you think that are going to be there, or is there something else that you think he may be interested in?
I think he could fight Poirier if Poirier loses to Conor. I think that's a fight that both those guys want. And I think Nate is kind of motivated to fight more by the fact that Nick's coming back to fight. So I think that kind of motivates Nate to, want to come back. I mean, we're talking about Nick coming back sometime before the end of the year, possibly within 4 months. And here's Nate saying he wants to fight within 3 to 4 months. So I think there's just a little bit of motivation.
On the same card.
Yeah,
that would be great if they fought on the same card.
It would be great if they fought on the same card, but at that point, like, you're spending a lot of money on a card, and you could probably break it up. You could probably break it up and get two big, get two big buy rates. So, but I mean, Masvidal is another option, because Masvidal's kind of in the same place that Nate is, where it's like, what do you do with him? And then, of course, we all know if Conor wins, Conor's fighting Oliveira next. There's zero question about that. Everybody knows it's going to happen. But I mean, if Conor loses to Dustin, I mean, the only fight that makes sense for him right now would be really Nate. He could fight Nick, but either one of those two, but Nate, and because we all know the trilogy fight's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many good fighters in that lightweight division, man. Like, there's so many names too. Even someone like Tony Ferguson, who's on his way down, he still has a name. So yeah, I'd really love to see, to see those guys at lightweight kind of just stick around, because there's just so much great stuff that they could do. All right, so let's talk about your guys' thoughts for the fight of the night. Now, again, I didn't see any of the undercard. I know I saw the main of. I saw bits and pieces of the main event of the ESPN Fight Night show, not Fight Night, the undercard. And so it looked like it was a really good fight, but I know there was like a 7-second knockout. I know there was some other good stuff. Or was that fight of the night on the main card? And Ryan, I'll let you go first.
Drew Dober and Brad Riddell was definitely the fight of the night. I mean, after last week, I mean, this fight could possibly be in the running for fight of the year. So they just had an absolute war. I don't know if it's as good as the Ponzinibbio Baeza fight right there last week, but if it wasn't, it's just a touch below that level. I mean, it was incredible. They were just hitting each other with just brutal shots and rocking each other. And it's just kind of everything you kind of want in an entertaining fight, with both guys rocking each other and neither one of them quitting, neither one of them willing to go down. And I mean, it was just great. So that was far and away the best fight on the card.
Is that what they when it came to bonuses, did that show?
Yeah,
I didn't see what the bonuses were. Okay,
that got fight of the night.
Paul, do you agree, or is there something else that you?
Yeah, I mean I mean, other than obviously the last couple minutes of Diaz and Edwards, and then the only other fight, that was I would even, the only other fight that you would have considered if that fight wasn't on is maybe the opener, the heavyweight fight, but it was more of a one-way thing. Carlos Felipe was out there trying to have a fight of the night, and Jake Collier just didn't really want to do it. So he was firing up the crowd, and he had the fight of the night in his last fight with Justin Taffa on Fight Island. That was like one of the first ones that had fans there, and the fans were going crazy for that fight. And Felipe was really playing to the crowd, and Collier just wanted to fight. So and then other than that, the Dober Riddell was just worth going out of your way to see if you haven't seen it yet.
So there were some names that I was interested in. Hakeem Dawodu, I saw that he lost and got taken down a ton. I know, fan favorite Joanne Calderwood, she lost via split decision to Lauren Murphy. What was interesting is Murphy was talking about during the week, like, if she just wins a decision, she probably doesn't get much out of it. What did you think about that statement, Ryan? And what do you think happens? Is she basically right?
I mean, I feel like she has to get the next title shot, Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, there's really nobody else right now. So, I mean, there's not a lot of finishes in that division either. So, yeah, I mean, she was asking for it afterwards at her little post-fight scrum. So, I mean, she won. It's 5 in a row. It's over a top contender. I mean, it's about as good as any person to fight Shevchenko next. Valentina's got to fight somebody, so might as well be Lauren Murphy. And hey, good for her. I mean, she was somebody who you never thought would be a title contender in the UFC, and here she is. Probably getting a title fight next.
All right, so let's talk about moment of the night, and I think the Moreno moment was awesome. I think a lot of people really loved that Nate Diaz moment. When the fans being back, like, I don't feel like that Moreno moment is quite as spectacular as it was in the gym, in Vegas, and I think it's such a big part of why I like this show. Now, this audience was really hard on anything that went to the ground. They just wanted to see Rock'em Sock'em Robots for sure. But, I think when we look back, coming out of the pandemic, like, I think this Brandon Moreno moment is going to be like one of the more memorable ones of the year. Paul, we'll start with you. Agree, or was there something else that you would have pegged as another top moment?
I will mention something. Is the Terrence McKinney, the stoppage that he had in one of the prelims against Matt Frivola, and the cool thing about this was he fought in March and he got a 16-second first round stoppage. Then he fought in April and got a 17-second stoppage. Then he fought 8 days ago and got a stoppage in just over a minute. And then he has this one. So he's got 4 first-round stoppages in 2021 already. Obviously, this was his UFC debut. But the moment was he celebrated and he twisted his ankle, Ryan? Jumping.
Looked like he blew out his knee.
Or blew out his knee. Okay, yeah. But, I mean, he's going to be out for a while, unfortunately. But it was a crazy moment, but and felt really happy for the guy. Dude looks like he's 12. But I hopefully he's got a long career ahead of him once he recovers. But that's Paul Acosta was the last one that did that, right?
What about you, Ryan?
I mean, the Moreno moment was obviously a special moment, especially coming in front of probably a largely Hispanic crowd, and UFC's been dying for a Mexican champion. And Dana White even said at the press conference on a Thursday that if Moreno wins, he's going to be a massive star in Mexico. But, as far as, that's probably the best moment of the night. But I also want to mention the Paul Craig moment, just that arm dangling, Jamal Hill's arm dangling from have. Now it wasn't an arm break. They said afterward. They said late on the show, and then afterwards that it was just a dislocated elbow. But we're talking about this is his third straight UFC pay-per-view event where we've seen just a limb detached from somebody's body. So it's just, and just that sight of Jamal Hill being locked in that triangle choke and that arm just dangling while Paul Craig is hitting him. That's just kind of one of those things where you kind of won't forget it if you saw it.
Did they say anything about that, the referee's decision to let that thing keep going in the post-fight?
I don't think it's been talked about, but I know that referee is a local referee, but he's also a Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor at a local gyms. So the fact that he let that go on is just, I don't know. And I don't know what Jamal Hill was doing. I don't know if he tried to tap and couldn't, or was yelling that, he was trying to submit, because you could see him yelling. I didn't see him tap, but he was like waving his right arm while he was in the arm bar, like he was trying to tap, but couldn't. And he was yelling out loud. I don't know what was going on. Just the entire whole sequence was weird, but I mean, that was a big upset for Paul Craig. So I kind of feel like that was a good moment on the card too.
Yeah. And like you said, it's memorable. And, when you watch MMA, there is always going to be the chance or the possibility that you see something that, may make you a little queasy there, but they just kept showing the replay over and over. And I was like, I didn't like watching it live. If you want to show the replay, show it once, but you have to show it like 3 different times. Jeez.
It's like when they showed that Weidman late break.
Time.
Oh my God. And then you see the people who want to GIF it on Twitter and tweet it on Twitter, and then you see it 100 times. All right. So let's actually talk about the big business, which is going to be next month, July. So it's going to be, in 4 weeks, July 10th, I believe. So I was talking to Dave Meltzer about this, and he thinks it's going to be their second biggest pay-per-view of all time, McGregor and Poirier. They just did this fight earlier. It was a great performance by Dustin, but terrible performance by Conor. I guess the question is, I do want to get your prediction, but I kind of want to get. I feel like Ryan has a little bit of insight around McGregor and sort of how seriously he takes this stuff. Like, because if I made $80 million last year, whatever that number is that he made, I don't know how inspired I would be to be like, the best guy or whatever. Plus, he's getting older. I just kind of wonder, are we going to see a different fight from the one just prior? Have you heard how his training's going? Have you heard how seriously he's taking this fight? Any like thing that worries you about him or any of that?
I mean, I haven't heard exactly. I know he started his camp in Abu Dhabi, and John Kavanaugh joined him about 4 weeks ago, and they've since moved. Now they're out in California doing. Yeah, I
saw LA or something. Camp.
Yeah, they're Orange County somewhere. They got kind of like Conor in the old days. Whenever he was fighting in Vegas, he would always set up camp in either Vegas or California. Just kind of doing this thing. I think he's a little bit more focused this time around. It's you're not having the challenges of trying to put together a camp and where you can do it in January and late last year was kind of challenging. I know he really wanted to go back to Ireland to prepare for that second Poirier fight, and he couldn't do that. And a lot of his training partners and whatnot, his normal crew couldn't get out of Ireland and stuff like that. I think it's a little bit easier this time. He's got his normal crew back with him, and he's got John Kavanaugh with him the entire time. So I don't, I think there's the selling of Proper 12 and all that. I think that's kind of, he made a ton of money off of it, but now he just kind of doesn't need to care about that anymore. I mean, he's still kind of a promoter. He still has a little piece of it. He's still going to make some money off of it, but it's not his side business anymore. He doesn't need to care about it. I think kind of just doing that. I think he's a little renewed focus on fighting, and we have all the challenges of the pandemic is behind everybody now. And I think
they just had another kid,
focus
right?
on it, and just yeah, they did. And I think he's always going to make money, but it's going to dry up if he keeps losing. I don't know how much. I don't know how much it'll dry up because because you kind of don't. It's kind of hard to say in MMA because the only person that really started losing a whole bunch and never really was hurt was Chuck Liddell. And maybe you could say the same thing about the Diaz brothers, but even at the end, Chuck Liddell, his fights weren't, at the end, the Rich Franklin fight, it didn't, draw the numbers.
11 years ago today. Heyday.
Yeah.
Ronda too.
Yeah. And Ronda is a different case because she only fought one time after the Holly Holm fight, and that fight still did 1 million pay-per-views against Amanda Nunes. So I mean, there was no subsequent, there was no Ronda on 3-4 fight losing streak. If Conor loses, that's 3 losses in 4 fights. Yeah. It's kind of hard, but I think Conor's going to win this fight. But I'm not as confident about it, and I don't know. So it's kind of hard to say what's going to happen.
Paul, so they played the video package for the fight. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Dustin talked a lot about which was the focus of that second fight too, which is Conor got on my nerves. He got under my skin. I let him, and that was part of it. Like emotionally, he had me there. Mentally, he had him. He's exercised that demon, right? He beat him, and you would think that there's that advantage for Poirier would even be stronger for this third fight, but again, McGregor focused and all that. He's still really dangerous with his hands. So I don't know. I kind of wonder. We've been wondering. Okay, when is Conor going to get back to what we saw, that guy on the rise who was so hungry? I don't know if that guy exists anymore. But then again, does that guy need to exist to win this fight, or is he talented enough to be 85% of what he was to beat Dustin?
I think you tapped into something there, and it's about the motivation. And so going into the last fight, Poirier was really motivated because he had lost, and the career trajectories that they took after the loss was, to Poirier, basically, he left the division. He went into lightweight. He won most of his fights. He had a couple key losses, but he worked his way back up there, and Conor just skyrocketed and became the biggest star in the sport. So
that video with Dana in the car was
perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah. So now it's reversed. The motivation is different. So he's got the big win. So he's taking this fight for money. Like, that's really the only motivation that he has here. And Conor's motivation is not money. It's he needs to win, and Conor doesn't like to lose. And so when he lost to Nate Diaz, I mean, he wanted nothing else but that rematch, and he was focused on the rematch, and he beat the bigger guy at his own weight class. And so that was his motivation. So, and that wasn't as long ago as people think it is. And Conor hasn't fought that much. So in terms of fighting years, like, Poirier is actually a much older fighter than Conor, when you look at it that way. And maybe even chronologically, like, Brian probably knows off the top of his head, but I don't think they're that much different in age either, but Poirier's fought a lot. So that's why, like, I think a lot of people are going to be picking Poirier in this fight just because of how the last fight went. But I think the motivation is a very important thing. And that video, you just kind of showed that. But what it doesn't show is where Conor is right now. And if Conor is serious and training, like Ryan said, in a camp and just shutting the world off, even his kids, like, I assume they're back in Ireland. Ryan might know, but I no. Oh, okay. So, but either way, like, if he's focused on fighting, that's good for him. And then the other thing is the fans. He's going to have a full arena, and he's the king of Vegas. And hope he might feed off the fans, Whereas in Abu Dhabi, it was different. I mean, there was 2,000 fans there. So
True, very true. All right, so do you guys have a prediction right now? I think Paul froze again, so he's probably trying to get his screen back. Do you have a prediction for this? Do you think that or do you have a good feeling yet on who you're going to pick? We still got 4 weeks, but
I feel like I'm going to go with Conor just because he does seem focused. I mean, I haven't seen him on social media all that much over the last, about 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It's almost like I think the third child was born right before he started the camp. So, and I haven't seen much social media activity for him, which is kind of good, kind of like I still think there's some, but it's
he's
like Tyson Fury.
Mostly posting photos of him shirtless or something like that. That's all I've seen.
And it's probably not even him posting them. It's probably somebody else doing it.
But you're saying it's not even him in the picture.
So it's just, well, no, it's definitely him in the pictures, but it's probably just people taking pictures of him training or doing whatever. But yeah, I kind of feel like Conor's going to win this fight just because when he it's like the Diaz fight. Whenever he lost that fight, he sunk his teeth into the rematch and said, "I'm doing nothing but preparing to win." And I feel like it's the same way this time around. And really, it's a far more important fight for him to win than it is for Dustin Poirier, because Poirier is going to make the most amount of money he's ever going to make in this fight. And after this, I mean, he's going to command big paychecks if he wins, but he's not going to ever get the Conor money or the money he'd get in a Conor fight. And I don't think beating Conor a second time automatically would make him $1 million pay-per-view draw every single time. So I really don't think Dustin Poirier actually cares if he wins or loses this one, because he could win or lose and just say, you know what, I've made my money with this fight, so now I'm going to walk away. So I think winning is probably more important to Conor McGregor in this one. So I kind of leaning towards Conor right now.
Paul, do you have a prediction yet 4 weeks out?
I mean, it sure sounds like I'm predicting Conor. And based on how we've been talking, like that's kind of the way I'm leaning right now. But I will be very interested in seeing what comes out over the next month, specifically from the Poirier side, and see, is he coming in confident? Is he kind of mentally checked out? And then that'll cement it. But it could come the other way. Conor could come in and just not seem like he's taking it seriously. Maybe some shenanigans are going to happen. So, but right now, if you ask me today, I'd probably say Conor.
I feel like I've predicted Conor's outside of the Cerrone fight. I think I've missed on the last other 4 or whatever. So I want to see Conor win. I think Conor winning is just great for the sport. I thought he was going to win last time, and he didn't. So yeah, I will withhold my prediction right now, other than to say that I want Conor to win, which may actually be a prediction that I don't know if he will. But okay, so you guys will be back on your podcast, In The Clinch, and you guys record on Monday night, so it's usually available Tuesday morning, sometimes late Monday night as well. You guys will recap the whole show, UFC 263 from front to back, and go through all the news. Ryan's article, his Monday article, will be up generally first thing Monday morning, and so you can read his thoughts there, and you'll hear both of their thoughts on In The Clinch. Anything else you want to say about the podcast?
Yeah, I haven't quite asked him yet, but there's a chance we'll have Filthy Tom on again on Monday.
Is he fighting pretty soon?
Yeah, he's fighting on Thursday.
Oh my gosh, that's a quick turnaround.
Yeah. So he's quarantining right now, and he told us last time that he wanted to do the show while he was in quarantine. So I just have to get around to asking him. So, but I mean, last time I think we cemented the time at Monday at 5. So yeah. We'll, I'll text him tomorrow, and hopefully we'll get him on.
All right. So, listen for that and check out both of these guys, Paul Ace Fontaine on Twitter, and Ryan, what is the way that you spell your name on Twitter?
Ryan J. Frederick.
Yeah, I forget the J. That's why.
Yeah. So because Ryan Frederick's not available, damn it.
Just watch UFC and you'll
I know.
see
I was
his
going to
name
say,
like
did you get
50
any?
times.
Did you get any heat tonight?
I got on there a few times. I only had one person DM me saying that my commentary is useless, which I really don't care because like I tell people, everybody who you see on there is doing the same thing they did before these tweets on the screen existed. So
I think I got on there.
They are not harming you. They are not harming your viewing experience. If they are, you've got all sorts of problems you need to deal with yourself.
Okay, so you can follow us on Twitter at Fight Game Media and on Facebook. Facebook page is also at Fight Game Media. And some of you are watching this on YouTube, and you can subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on Facebook instead. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube subscriptions are growing ever so. I guess it's actually kind of quick. I'm sure some bigger sites, they're probably like, you guys are growing so slowly. But there's a lot of heart going into this channel. So thanks to Paul and Ryan. They really appreciate you guys coming on. I know it's late for both of you, not as late for me. So it's really you guys giving up your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me and talking about this show. It was an entertaining show. I don't know if UFC does any like non-live buys. Like I don't know if like ESPN Plus gets any orders, for the next day or whatever if you hear it's a good show. But I mean, I think if you have ESPN Plus, it'll probably be up there for free in like 3 weeks or something. But this is a good one, especially for that moment, the Brandon Moreno moment, the Nate Diaz stuff. Like there's some really good stuff on this show to watch back. So for Paul and Ryan, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out. Paul, you got to finish it, man.
Later.